Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home. Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Welcome to the Freebirth Society podcast. This is a radical space for women who are ready to celebrate their autonomous choices in birth, motherhood, and beyond. Together, we'll learn about wild birth through personal narrative, we'll explore the politics of birth, and we'll analyze everything that relates to our lives as women from a feminist perspective. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
All right, welcome to the show, Hari.
Thank you so much.
Where are you calling in from today?
Costa Rica.
And that's where you live.
We live in the top of this beautiful mountain in Costa Rica. It's amazing.
How long have you guys been settled there?
Well, about 9 months, I'd say.
Oh, the length of your baby's life.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So that's a cool.
That's part of the story.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So yeah, take us to wherever you really want to start. Like, who are you before you become a mom? When does this idea of free birth come into your consciousness? And then, yeah, weave it in certainly with this big move, because that would be, I'm sure, so related.
Yeah. So before I got pregnant, I was living in Portugal. Me and my husband, we talked about having babies for a long time. And we had a lot of stuff to work through first. And then one day, just out of the blue, it just felt aligned to try. You know, we're like, okay, we're gonna do it. And afterwards, he was like, put your legs up against the wall and lay down. You know, like this old wives' tale. Who knows if it works? But I did that for half an hour.
It's fun.
No, exactly. And yeah, I got pregnant first time, which is wild when you spend years, worrying about getting pregnant. And I thought, okay, I'm 34, I thought maybe it would take a bit longer. I was on birth control when I was younger and whatnot. So we were in Portugal, and I should give some background to the medical stuff as well.
Sure.
Because at that point, I hadn't been interacting with the medical system for quite some time. I had my own reasons, because when I was younger, I had acne, and I was put on birth control for the acne and all the topical antibiotics and everything. And they never asked me anything about my past traumas that I'd experienced. And I think I just became disillusioned. I had the copper coil at some point. I had one of those awful, they said that there was some cells in my, when they do those cervical things, and I had one of those LETS treatments. And I can't remember what made me just go, I'm just not gonna do this anymore. It just didn't feel right. I just started to realize that I could figure stuff out on my own, and I didn't really want to take pharmaceuticals, first of all. I didn't want to interact with a lot of doctors that I feel aren't really walking the talk,
So how young were you when you started on birth control, and then how old were you when you got off all of it?
Oh God, I think I was at least 13 when I started, and I was on Dianet, which is one of the worst ones apparently, and I was on it for at least 8 years.
8?
Yeah.
So you're 21 when you get off it? Or something?
Maybe 23. I can't remember exactly, but I remember how once it had finally come out of my system, how I felt like a different human being.
Wow. I mean, 10 years, 13 to 23, your entire developing. God, that's so intense that we do that to girls. Wow.
Well, it seems ridiculous now if I think what the hell? But I was in that paradigm then, I was fully in it. I didn't know anything else. So, and now I'm like, what? We do this to ourselves?
Well, I mean, I don't know if a 13-year-old doing it to herself.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
I was just desperate, I didn't want to be pus-filled face, and it's it was the worst to have acne.
Right. Whereas
Um,
like when our daughters have acne, we're gonna be like, what's your conflict and what are you eating? And
yeah, like,
like God,
yeah,
it's right.
my acne only went away when I started feeling all my suppressed emotions that
Mm-hmm.
stopped feeling when I was 9.
Mm-hmm.
So it was amazing. And I think once I started my healing journey at around like 26, and I actually started feeling my emotions again, and I noticed that my skin started changing, and there was not really any diet changes. It wasn't to do with diet, it was just energy. It was like
Mm-hmm.
energy coming out of my skin, like self-hate.
Mm-hmm.
And once that started changing, I was like, this this shows me something, that there's more to life than just, oh, we've got a physical issue, let's fix it with something. Like, no, we're deeper than that.
Topical.
We're
Yeah.
deeper energetic beings.
So from
So
23 on, you're starting to really figure out who you are and you're getting off the pharmaceuticals. You're starting to feel like a real human, feel like yourself. And then what happens?
yeah, I went on a big spiritual journey like many people do. That's where I met my husband. And yeah, so I can come back to where we're in Portugal, and I got pregnant. It was I did use a pregnancy test. And yeah, I did. It was hard to fathom really when I just saw those two lines. I was like, "What is this contraption?" Like, what? It was just, I didn't even believe it. The second line when it was coming out, and my husband was like, "That means you're pregnant." I was like, "No, no, it's not dark enough yet." Like, I just couldn't fathom the fact that I was pregnant. And before getting pregnant, I dabbled a little bit in like learning about birth, but not really. I don't think I'd found Free Birth Society yet at all. I think I just somehow suddenly was interested in looking at natural birth videos, but I didn't do it a lot. But I just knew as soon as I got pregnant, I already wasn't interacting with the medical system. So I was like, okay, so I just do it. Which felt okay. And I think where it became a bit challenging was about 8 weeks into my pregnancy. I had a really strong, bright red bleed. I was in a supermarket and I felt this force come out of my yoni, and I put my hand there and it was bright red blood, and I was like dripping really fast. And I was like, oh shit. And of course, I was Google searching and, obviously learning about miscarriage and everything. And I still, despite all of that, I had massive anxiety attacks because I sort of I made it worse really by searching. Um, I still didn't want to go to the doctor, so I just trusted. I was like, well, there's nothing I can do if
Right.
I'm going to lose this baby. And somehow that experience of having so much anxiety in the beginning and realizing like I created all of that, I made that so intense, that set me up for the rest of the wild pregnancy, because I realized that all I can do is just show up. Like, I'm not in charge of growing the baby. I'm just showing up and nourishing myself as best I can, just listening to my body. And so yeah, she was obviously okay. Um yeah, and I didn't share this yet actually, that I maybe in 2018 I had this name come to me, which I was like, am I meant to change my name? Because I was sort of in some new age wanky spiritual circles back then. And I was like, no, it doesn't feel like it's my name. And then it's only when I became pregnant that I realized, oh, it's for my baby.
Cute.
Which, yeah, so I sat with that. I didn't like fully stick on it just in case, when she was born. But yeah, I started to really feel her. And we were living in Portugal at the time. I said that. And we got kicked out of our house. They wanted to put it on Airbnb, the standard thing. And at that moment, I thought, I don't know if we're meant to stay here in Portugal. And a friend had planted a seed about Costa Rica some years back. And I just said to my husband, I don't know if we're meant to stay in Portugal. Like, what do you think about us going to Costa Rica? And he was quite, like reluctant. We've been in Portugal 3 years at the time, made amazing community and everything. It didn't make any sense on a logical level, right? And we just kept sitting with it. And then I think after sitting with it for a while, I think we booked the tickets when I was 6 months pregnant to go to Costa Rica. And yeah, so we And when I was 6 months, we moved into a caravan, and that was hard because it was really hot. It was Portugal in the summer, and it was like 30 degrees inside, and I was like 6 months pregnant. I was like, this is really intense. But yeah, we sold so many of our belongings and sort of condensed them down, and yeah, we moved to Costa Rica when I was 7.5 months pregnant.
Like having never been there.
No, I'd never been there. My partner, he'd been there when he was 19. But yeah, we knew one person who lived where we are living now. And it was just really clear. The guidance was really clear to go to Costa Rica. And all of our friends in Portugal were like, why are you going? Like, we want to meet this baby that you're growing. Why are you leaving? And I was like, baby guidance, my guidance. Like, and even my husband, who was resistant to it initially, was like, feels right. So yeah.
What is it about Costa Rica? Like what was guidance? Yeah, like because that is a big deal to leave a 3-year deep crew and a place you guys seem to like and go one way to a place you've never been before to have a baby is a little bit of a wild idea. Like what were you going there for, and did you get it?
I think, yeah, we're in Portugal, we're in the south, which is it's incredibly dry. So that was a huge thing. I, in my own journey, was feeling the importance of water and really connecting with that element a lot. And I know that Naya, her name actually means water. And I think she really wanted to be born like next to a river, which is where she was born. And yeah, and also just, I don't know what it was. Like, I think I guess logically I gave ideas like, okay, yeah, there's abundance of water there, and there's nature all around. It's a lot more green, it's a lot more lush. I'm very much a nature being. Like, if the nature's lush and really abundant, I'm really happy.
I mean,
But it
that
was difficult.
matters.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Yeah. I mean, we left Colorado for where we are now for that same reason, just like
Yeah.
needing lush, needing water. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean Portugal is incredible. I love it. There's no comparison. They're completely different
Yeah.
things. But it was, yeah, I think the biggest thing was the water. It was like Portugal was drying up, and it continues to dry up, and you know how the world is. It's like lots of extreme things happening. So yeah, and it for sure. We live right next to a river, a stone's throw away, and where we live is called Chiripo, which is like the land of eternal waters. So, they kind of answered that prayer, I guess.
So you show up and you're having a wild pregnancy, and do you have language for all of this? Like, do you know about free birth? Like, what's kind of your frame for all of this?
Yeah, I think what I found when I was still in Portugal, when people were like, "Oh, you're pregnant. Who's your midwife going to be?" And I was just like, "I'm not going to have a midwife." They were like, "What?" Because in the community I lived in, everyone had the same midwife, right? And it was so interesting. Every time people would project I was like, "Oh, they've got birth trauma. They've got birth trauma," because they're putting it onto me. And I desperately wanted to find someone to speak to personally that had free birth, and it was quite difficult. And I wanted to find a first time mum that had done it, because there's so many women that have done it second time. And my friend knew someone that did it, so we had a call, and she was the one that said, listen to the Free Birth Society podcast. Like, and I was like, oh, there's a whole podcast with women talking about this. Great. So then I started listening to that, and that gave me I think I knew about free birth. I knew about it. Like, it just suddenly just became huge in my life. It wasn't like I was researching it before, and it was like, okay, I'm free birthing. But
Well, that's what I love about it, because it's like, even though there's this, there's a thing happening, where it's taken over Instagram and the birth world and, all this stuff, largely thanks to me and this podcast. I love that it's also, and more so, an intuitive knowing, it's so much bigger than any of that, and that women just, from the dawn of time, I'm sure, and forevermore, will just decide or choose to do this. And it doesn't need any language, and it doesn't need to be heady, and it doesn't need to be this whole hashtag. It's such a private internal choice or awakening or whatever, you want to call it. And I, a lot of women find out about it from the podcast, and that's so cool. But I especially love when women just like make it up, because it's like, yeah, exactly. It's just yours to have. It's just an idea. And it's an idea to just actually allow. It's not like you don't need to buy anything. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to go anywhere. It's to actually just flow. It's to not interrupt, it's so cool.
Yeah, and I also want to share that my connection with Naya kept getting stronger, and she was like, "You are free birthing me." There wasn't another option, Emily. Like, she was so confident. So, of course, throughout, like, maybe I had some fears coming up in preparation, but once I connected with her, like, she was just so certain and confident this is what's happening, and I didn't have a lot of doubt. I'm being real. Like, I think my husband had a lot of fear, but he could feel how strong I was in my knowing, like, I'm pre-birthing. And he just was like, okay, I trust her. Like, he could feel how strong I was in it. And I just was like, this is happening. I just knew it.
So what, if any, did you feel like you needed to kind of prepare? Did you choose to like educate yourself, or was it just pretty intuitive and not heady? Or like, what did you kind of feel like you personally needed to wrap your head, heart, and household around in order to be so confident?
I think the one thing that I was missing was people that had done it, people that were talking about it as if it was like, yes. And because I started following you, and like at that time, you had put your complete guide to free birth on sale. And I just was like, I'm going to buy it. And what I got from it was just validation for what I was choosing from you and Yolandi. I wasn't really so interested in the medical stuff that would, because I wasn't worried about any of that. So it was more just hearing you guys talk about it as if like this is a real thing. It's like I needed that kind of like, you were like the little cheerleaders, like this is a real thing. And I was like, yes, it's real. Like and that really helped me. I needed that. So at the time I didn't have community, or I didn't know many people that are free birthed. And I'm in the community, but in the actual world, I don't know that many women that are free birthed, like personally, we're all sort of dotted all over.
Yeah.
So I just wanted community. I wanted to know, like, yes, what you're doing is totally viable and safe and good, So that helped me a lot.
So anything else to share about, take us to the point, since you do birth on, the earlier side, take us from when you land in Costa Rica to, right around that time. Like, what else is there to say about you preparing, and then take us into the, I'm assuming, surprise and shock of, birth presenting so soon.
Yeah, so I booked us a place, we paid a deposit for a house that we're still in before. So we had somewhere to land, it was just easy. And we were just nesting, like making it cozy, because it's just a really cute mountain cabin, so we had to make it a bit cozy. So we were very nesty vibes. But yeah, we didn't have a car at this point. We were relying on our neighbor to take us down into town. And I became friends with a sweet 73-year-old lady that lives up the road. But yeah, preparation wise, like we hadn't even got to the point of, like, I wanted to have a water birth, hadn't even got to the point of getting a pool or anything, and we were just gonna get like a kids pool, like and yeah, a lot of my time preparation actually from being here was learning about the rules and regulations, or just like the way birth works in Costa Rica. Because I don't know if you know about Costa Rica, but the hospital system here is pretty terrible, and they forcibly vaccinate your child, and things like that. So I had to learn, okay, how am I going to free birth?
Where does that not happen?
Oh, do they always forcibly vaccinate in every country? Oh, I thought like you had an option, like in somewhere like England, if you wanted.
That's what they say. But I know way too many nurses who have told me that they just do it when the mom's asleep.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I mean, I'm sure some children get out without it. You get my point. Like, I'm saying all hospital systems are bad. All hospital systems are doing shit that parents are saying no to.
Mm,
Yeah, of course. Ugh,
yeah.
yeah. Okay. And
Yeah,
also
I just,
birthing this way in Costa Rica with getting a birth certificate can be complicated.
yeah, we had to find, special arrangements for that. Um, yeah, I just basically didn't want her to go into the system at all
Yeah.
because they have a thing where they come and check on you and they like it's kind
Hmm.
of like the Gestapo and it's scary.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I was finding out the information for that, finding out what I needed, and also making sure that I could go through this entire pregnancy without seeing a doctor because all the women that I was contacting saying you still have to go and see this doctor, and I was like, no, I don't. And I was like, I was visualizing, I'm gonna go through this entire pregnancy without going into any medical establishments, and I wangled it somehow because I just was like, I'm not doing it. Um, and yeah, so to start the birth story, I went into town when I was like 33 weeks with my friend Tina. And I went into the toilet. I was peeing all the time, obviously, at that point. And when I peed, I found what I thought was my mucus plug. And I was like, well, this must be a mucus plug. I've never seen one before, but I'm guessing that. And I thought that's strange, 33 weeks, 6 days. At this point, I joined the Freebirth Society um, group community. So I wrote like, has anyone lost their mucus plug this early? And some women were like, yes, but your waters can reseal, or you don't know, you could be in labor. I was like, or you could be starting. And I was like, okay. So I didn't worry about it. I just was like, okay. And that was on Monday. And then Wednesday morning in the AM at 1 p.m., after I got up from my normal 2-hour pee stop, I got back into bed and my yoni just gushed of water. And I was like, that is not pee. I was like, my waters are breaking? Can't be. So I'd tell my partner in the morning, like, I think my waters are broken. He was just like, what? And I was like, I know. And so again, it was like, maybe they're real seal or whatever. I don't know. Um, so yeah, that day I was
You didn't
feeling
feel you didn't feel
like,
scared?
no, I was just like, okay. I didn't, I was just trusting. I mean, I think at this point, like I said, that connection that I had with Naya, I even even the flight, we almost missed our flight to Costa Rica because my husband was freaking out. He had like an old trauma coming up. And the gate, it said like last call, and he was like, I'm gonna run to the gate. And I was like, I'm not running, I'm walking.
Okay, sisters, listen up. This is really big and really important. If you are a sovereign birth worker of any kind, if you are working with women holistically, totally independent of the medical system, the Worldwide Sovereign Birth Professional Directory is finally here. I am thrilled to announce that the Match-A-Birth Directory is live. This is a long time coming and something we have been working really hard on behind the scenes that is going to majorly support the longevity of the birth liberation movement. We are contacted here at Freebirth Society on average 100 times a week by women around the world asking for our help in connecting them to sovereign birth professionals. So that really guided us to create something that fills a major need. No need to be underground anymore, no need to be at a loss of how to find your clients, or in reverse, where to even start looking for a radical birth keeper. We did the hard work to create the network so that you beauties can all find each other with ease. So here's the deal. Through the end of the year, we are intaking professionals who offer sovereign pregnancy and birth support. So that's coaching, education, birth witnessing, any and all of it. Women who offer postpartum support of any kind, women who offer holistic fertility and cycle coaching, and women who offer birth trauma integration sessions. Now, this can be live, in person, or virtual. If you are a professional that offers anything within these categories, you need to head over to matchabirthdirectory.com and get yourself listed. If you're a woman or a mother seeking these services, you can drop your name on our waitlist and be the first to hear when we go public. So all of you, but especially those of you in the professional world of birth, head over to matchabirthdirectory.com and join the network.
And we were the last people on the plane, and I just knew, like, I just had this trust, this like knowing that everything was going to be okay throughout most of the pregnancy, but especially towards the end. And that carried. So when my waters broke, I was like, okay, I trust. And so, most days here when the sun is out, we go to the river on the rock. And that morning I didn't go. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stay. I feel a bit sensitive and I wasn't sure what was happening. And I was incredibly hungry that day. That's the most I've eaten in a long time. I ate so much and I pooped so much. Like I was like, how can I pooped 6 times. I was like, I've never pooped that much in my life, other than maybe when I was a baby. So I was like, okay, this is strange. But I didn't have like, I had like some faint murmurings in my womb, but nothing to write home about. And maybe towards the end of the day, they got a bit more kind of like, a bit stronger. And so my husband went up. We had a downstairs bedroom, and he went upstairs to get my toothbrush. He was like, okay, let's stay down here tonight, just in case that's where we were planning on doing the birth. And when he came back down from giving my toothbrush, suddenly I was in labor. I was like, I can't even brush my teeth. Like it was just suddenly like that. I was like, I can't brush my teeth. And then before I knew it, I was in active labor, just like that. And yeah, I was like, turn the lights off, turn everything off. We didn't have anything, planned or anything. And my husband couldn't see anything once it got dark, because the sun goes down at like 6 here. So he had like a little headlamp on. And I what it's like, you go into the birthing thing, and I was just.
So you being what, just shy of 34 weeks, it sounds like?
I was 34 weeks and 2 days when I went into labor.
So as you're realizing it's real and labor is actually occurring, I mean, you weren't nervous about her development or, it being so early?
No, I didn't. I think, what happened? I know what helped me a lot was that maybe a week before, maybe this was all perfectly guided, someone that I follow on Instagram shared about her 35-week gestation births. Mm-hmm. And that somehow gave me this thing of like, it's okay, you can give birth this early. Or you can give birth at this time. I don't even like saying early because it's just when they choose. So I think that gave me this feeling of like, this is just another variation of normal. I didn't freak out. I was like, okay, I'm going into labor. And by the time I got sucked into the labor portal, I was just like, I couldn't think about anything. I was just like, wah! And I definitely would have liked a bit more time to prepare for the birth, because you can't prepare for the sensations. You can't prepare for the earthquake, the shattering, like being split open, like I don't know, you can't. But yeah, I was definitely like shocked by the intensity of it. And I think I didn't have any pre-labor. I didn't have any, it was just like suddenly I was like, boom, in it. And I was like, whoa. And yeah, I was howling. I was using my voice in ways that I've never used it before. And that was the only way in that I could go through it. And yeah, I was asking my husband, I was like, can you rub my lower back? I don't think I had back labor, but it was sensitive, but I was so sensitive to touch. And I was like, that's so hard, even though it wasn't hard, and it just, I don't think at some points he could really handle, like the sounds that were coming out of me. And so I think he put in headphones at some point. I think he left the room at some point. I didn't even know. He was like, I had to go make something to eat. And I didn't even know he'd left the room. And I think actually, it was easier in some way when he wasn't there, because he had his own fears, of course, because he was like, we don't have a car. If something goes wrong, how are we going to get anywhere? So I think I could feel that on some level. So when he left the room, it was still intense, but it was easier. And yeah, I didn't have a lot of space between contractions. So yeah, one they'd come on and I feel like I had like a minute rest and I was like, no, I can't go back in. I'm not ready, And he at some point, I don't know what the time was, but at some point he said, why don't you get on all fours? Because I was sort of laying on the bed at that point, so I could sort of rest in between. So I got on all fours, and then of course, like I didn't realize this at the time, but there was more pressure because the baby was coming down. But I was on all fours, and like poop started flying out of my butt, and my husband was lovingly, cleaning it, and I was like, no, I don't want to do this. So like at that point I got on the toilet, I was like, I'm gonna clean my own butt with our bum gun, like if it's coming out. And I hadn't clicked at that point that, the pressure was pushing things out. And I had the same story I'm sure many women do. Nothing's happening, nothing's changing, I can't do this. And at some point my guides was like, check your yoni. Like, have you even checked? So at that point I was sitting on the toilet, I put my hand in there and I was like, oh, that feels like a head. Like, obviously, I think I've never done this before.
But like, what else could it be?
Yeah, exactly. And I said, Joffrey, come in here. Do you think this feels like a head? And he said, yes. And at that point, I was like, oh, I'm kind of on the home stretch. Like, and I was on the toilet and I was howling like a werewolf, but I somehow felt like, okay, like it has been moving along and I'm further along than I thought I was. And yeah, as she started to come down quite quickly, and yeah, I was really glad that I watched the episode that you and Yolandi talk about the Ring of Fire, because I was prepared for it. But somehow, I don't know, the whole time during the birth, like I don't feel like I'm in control, right? I'm just surrendering. But somehow, once she was coming into the birth canal, I felt like I had more power or control, because I was like, okay, like I can push her, and I didn't have the fur, the spontaneous pushing thing happen. It was like I had to push her out. And yeah, I so yeah, even though it was like on the toilet, somehow it felt really good to be pushing, because that's kind of where you release stuff generally. And yeah, I think through a few pushes I got her head out, and I sort of held her head with my muscles. I've heard that sometimes people say like in between contractions, they can go back in. So I held her and with my head, and Joffrey wasn't even here at the time. He was out. So once I got her head out, I called him and I was like, Joffrey, her head's out. And he came in and he was like, oh my God. So I was like, stand by, stand by. And then I did another push and her, just her shoulder and arm came out. And then I did one more push and I said, like, get ready and catch her. He caught her just over the toilet and she came out, and he put her through my legs, and I just sort of ambled to the bed from the bathroom, and her cord was actually quite short. Like it was quite hard to get her to reach my breasts. And yeah, I think I was just in shock. I think that point it was 7 hours. So I think I went into active labor at like 7 p.m. She was born at 1:30. And I was just, yeah, I was like, oh my God. She cried straight away. She was very pink. She seemed fine. And we rested, for a good 45 minutes to an hour, just to kind of ground into, okay, there's a tiny human here. And then I was like, okay, let's try and get the placenta out. So I went into the shower, and we still had her attached and stuff. And I think I crouched down, but it just didn't seem to be coming out. And I tried a few more times, but at this point I was just exhausted. So I said, let's just go to bed. And then we woke up the next morning at 6 a.m. or the same morning even. And I kept trying to release the placenta, and it just didn't want to come. And at that point, I realized that I had lost the ability to pee. I simply just could not pee. That was pretty tricky because I really needed to drink and hydrate and eat, but I didn't want to eat and didn't want to get thirsty. And I had planned, I was in contact with an acupuncturist before my birth. Just in any case, an acupuncturist is probably the only kind of thing I would use, in case of emergency. And I sent, because, I didn't say, after she was born, I didn't get any afterbirth contractions or anything like that, which I guess is why the placenta also didn't come. So I texted that.
First time moms very rarely feel. I'm sure they did happen on some level, but like I didn't feel any my first baby.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. No. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. But yeah, I texted her and I said, can you come over? And she came over that morning and she put in points, and it helped start the afterbirth contractions. And she also was really helpful because she told me in her birth she lost the ability to pee. and they put a catheter in her. She was like, why don't you text someone? Because that was the day we were meant to go to the market and we didn't go, obviously. And our friends picked up a catheter for us from town. So what would they bring back this catheter? And obviously my yoni was hugely swollen, I'm imagining, not that I was looking at it. And my husband, bless him, was trying to find my urethra and he was poking for ages, with this like, this plastic thing. And I at this point, like my whole center was in absolute agony. I had this huge cramp because I hadn't peed in however long. And it was like really a huge pressure. And then he was also trying to get this thing into my urethra. And I was like, I can't take it anymore. I can't. Like it was so painful. And Naya was still attached with, the placenta and everything. So it was just, it was intense. But thankfully, the acupuncturist, our friend, came back and she was like, oh, well, like wherever the urethra normally is probably migrated because, yoni is so swollen. So once they realized that, they got it in okay. And then my bladder was able to release, which was incredibly relieving. Almost, it was the most relieving. It was almost more relieving because it was so painful that I was thinking like, wow, if I don't release my bladder soon, can your bladder burst? That was the only thought of like, maybe I need to go to the hospital just to release my bladder, like I didn't know what to do because it was so incredibly painful. But I would have left Naya at home just to say. But yeah, so that as soon as my bladder released, I was able to birth a placenta. I just literally sat on the toilet, put a bowl, in the toilet, and then I coughed and it came out. And yeah, so then that was about 15 hours later. And then, all the adrenaline started to cool down and I started to feel like what I'd just been through because I didn't feel like it before. Yeah, so and yeah, that was an incredible relief once that had all shifted.
So she was just like a totally normal, perfect, able to nurse, no red flags, 34 weeker.
Yeah, she was really pink. She seemed fine. Like she looked like a little skinny bean, but I haven't seen many newborns. I think a lot of newborns look a bit skinny, right? She was 5 pounds. Um, yeah, she seemed fine. I didn't have any kind of no motherly instincts in me were worried about anything.
And her nursing was easy.
Yeah, I think the first few days, because I'd never done it before, I struggled a little bit, just to get the latch right. But yeah, no issues. She slept a lot, obviously, but she's just been through this huge experience of becoming a spirit into a body. So I imagine that's normal.
For sure.
So yeah.
So simple, huh?
Yeah.
If you had gone to a hospital anywhere in the world at 34 weeks, they would have given you Pitocin and forced her to be born even quicker than, she was, which was already quite fast. And then she would have been taken away to NICU for assessment. And, most NICUs would have to keep her based on their own guidelines of weight and assessment, and gosh, it just would have been, you look at this totally normal mother baby that would have just been totally not normal. Her start of life would have been so very different.
For sure.
It's crazy. Like, because she wouldn't, I guess what I'm saying is she wouldn't have ever gotten the chance to be normal when she clearly was. But she wouldn't have even gotten to show that for herself.
Exactly, because there's no discernment when that happens. It's just like it's black and white. They're going
A
into the NICU.
34-week, 5-pound baby is not normal in the system.
Yeah.
But that's why I love these stories, because it's like, fuck you. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Like, actually, look at us out here doing this thing. And it's great. Yeah. Like the range of true, normal, and healthy and possible is so much wider. It's so cool.
Yeah. And I just wondered, like, what made you come at this time, because she was obviously ready. I was like, maybe she just wanted to continue early development growth on breast milk rather than placenta juice. I don't know. Like, it's like,
We'll
why?
never know.
No,
We'll
no,
never-
exactly.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see if you do choose to have more children. Like I supported this one family, one mother who she had 4 children. I was with her for her last 3, but all 4 children came at 34 weeks.
Wow.
That was her normal, which I don't think is super common. I think I think it's more likely that you would carry later in
Mm,
subsequent pregnancies. I think when I zoom out, this is like totally anecdotally, I have no idea what the statistics would be in the system, but I think it's less common that you like are always hitting the same if it's that early. But I
mm,
did know this woman who, I mean, her first one was 34 weeks. Her second one, we were like, it happened again right on the dot. And we were like, oh, that's crazy. By the third one, she's like, maybe this is just what happens. And then obviously by the fourth one, we were like, this is your normal every single time. How crazy.
mm.
So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see, you know, yeah, what your future babies do and if it does have anything to do with that or just her and just her unique timestamp.
Yeah, right. And then the crazy thing was is that a few days before that had checked this. I don't know if you've ever checked your mind sign. Um, but we when we didn't know if I was going to go into labor, we were like, oh, let's see what her mind sign will be today or tomorrow or the day after. And yeah, the day that she was born, she was water, which her name means
Mm,
water. And then she
cute.
also was the jaguar. And I'm a jaguar. So we called her Naya Jaguar because of that. And we were like, maybe she just needed to be born, on that specific day. Like it was just, I was thinking I was going to have a Sagittarius baby and I had a Libra, like it's just, I couldn't believe. I was just, yeah, completely surprised. But I've, I completely trusted her, like, and trusted that. Yeah, it didn't even enter my mind. I think this is something I got out of out of your complete guide to free birth course because so many mothers were saying you should have a backup plan. You should plan for going to the hospital if there's an emergency, and it just didn't resonate with me. I was like, but I don't want to factor that into my consciousness because I don't want that to be my reality. And then I heard Yolandi say that she never ever made backup plans, or she never ever was like had a plan B because she knew that she was going to free birth, and that really validated me, if you know what I mean.
Yes, totally. And I think the whole backup plan thing is kind of stupid anyway, because we all know that it is the backup plan. Like
Yes, exactly.
without having to flesh it out, without having to talk about it. Obviously, that is the inherent plan B. And thank God, thank God we're in a time that if you truly happen to be one of those very rare women in a life or death situation, how cool that I'd prefer the systems to be a bit better, but how cool
Mm,
that it's at least within the realms of that they might be able to save your life with surgery.
yeah.
But shy of that, I mean, it's just like you said around with the catheter, like obviously if at some point you couldn't handle it yourself, you knew what you were going to do. So this
Yeah.
whole idea of a backup plan in sovereign birth is like, why are we even talking about it? It's obvious.
Mm,
What would
yeah.
be another backup plan?
Well, exactly. And you just know, like if you're connected to your intuition and your body, you know when you're in danger because it speaks to you. So I just trusted that my body would let me know if there was something really dangerous, or, like if I felt something with Naya was off. Of course I would have gone if it was really like telling me to. But yeah, it's like it didn't need to be there as like, overlooming my shoulder because I feel
And
then.
yeah, and it has to be worth it because for specifically this example of her being on the younger side, that's a good example of like, well, what would they really do? And would that really increase her life support? And I mean, time and place, like there's no denying that there are definitely technologies and machines within the system that have kept babies alive, and
Mm,
some of those babies are like normal functioning people. That's within, like, of course that's true, and there's also a lot of babies that go into NICU and don't come out.
Mm.
or are harmed by the things that they do, right? So it also needs to be like worth it. That's one of my biggest what's the right word, like upsets around the ignorance that women still have around hospital systems and procedures, and what actually goes down is that the majority of what they're doing is not actually supportive of life to mother or baby. It's like objectively just harmful and dangerous. And so, yeah, it's kind of this like gray cloud of like, oh, yeah, I'll go there if I think I need help. But most people that are transferring have no idea what they think they need. It's just this kind of like empty, like arms open, just like save me. But hold up, why are you going? You know, what do you think they have? Because I know what they have, and they have very little. Yes, they have surgery. They have fucking surgery. If you need surgery to save your baby's life, go there. Right. But anyway, you get what I mean? Like it's actually a small amount of real tools. I don't think Pitocin is a real tool. I don't think epidurals, I think that's just nonsense. Episiotomy, like all this stuff that they do is insane.
Mm-hmm.
But they do have some real tools also.
Yeah. Yeah, and also I didn't mention that I had, well, I don't know what kind of tear it was, but it was a tear. And I didn't, feel that I would go anywhere to get that looked at. I just
Yeah.
trusted that it would heal. And yeah, I have some scar tissue from it. But I know that the only heals itself, and that's what it's designed to do, no? Like,
And you're only 9 months postpartum. Like who knows what it will be like in 3 years or after another baby. It's always changing and healing, and nine
exactly.
months in some ways is actually still not that far out.
No, it's true. Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to add about your story or postpartum before we close?
Just that I think being able to, I don't know, have this experience of rebirthing and being kind of fully in it without any kind of input from anyone or anything during the birth and postpartum. I think I didn't know before giving birth like how incredible the grace is that you can receive if you don't have so much trauma to process, or like, I mean, of course it was intense in its way and it took me a few days or whatever, but I have experienced so much, so many things just melt away, like from becoming a mother, like the story that I held on for so many years of my not so good connection with my mum when I was younger, and I was like, once I became a mother, and I just was like, why am I still holding on to this? She's my mother. She's amazing. She did this. And I was like, I was so humbled, by the girl I was still before I gave birth. And now, like, when I commune with my mom, it's like I feel just pure love. And I'm like, what happened to all that shit I was holding against her for my whole freaking life? That's just one aspect of the grace that I can share. And it feels like becoming a mother, and it just feels like it's just never ending, like these gifts that we get given. And I don't hear that spoken about enough. And I'm so humbled. I feel so grateful to just be able to just I guess it's also the unconditional love, that you get connected to. It's that that is no joke. Like if you can fully, if you're not living a super stressful life, and you can actually like sort of really ground into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to receive, Emily. And I'm still shocked, 9 months postpartum, I still experience it. And I'm so grateful for it. It's I think the most beautiful gift to be a woman, to be able to give birth and to be able to experience it spiritually. I had no idea about it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I do think it's the spiritual design. I think it's the true natural design, which makes sense. Like birth is biologically incentivized to make you want to do more so that we can continue, right? But most women emerge from their births being like, hell no,
Yeah.
I'm not going through that again. But they haven't yet untangled. It's not birth. It's their life, it's their choices, it's their doctors, it's their shitty husbands, it's their stressful everything, it's their traumatic births, da, 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 da. But
Mm.
we have this like whole community and this whole archive now of 7+ seasons of hundreds of stories of women being like, wait, what? You can be like psychedelically up leveled into all these new levels of consciousness by birth and by mothering in this intact way. And I mean, I remember that in both my postpartums. I just was like high as a kite in true euphoria and ecstasy, for months, and was in a truly altered state of consciousness, just receiving so much, just so much, just flooding into my system and like reorganizing my consciousness. And it
Yeah.
was an up level both times. And Nancy and Kristen talk about that a lot with the blood mysteries. What's it called in Chinese medicine? The golden opportunities. And that there is this very clear design that in a woman's life, we have golden opportunities to up level our consciousness.
For
And
sure. I got shivers
so
when you said that.
obvious. It's so obvious.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I didn't have like a pleasurable orgasmic birth, but
No, me
what I
either.
did, what I did experience through it was, all of this trauma that I was holding from my
Mm.
childhood with with my dad. I felt that lifting out of my cells.
Mhm.
And that's why I was so sensitive to my husband's touch. I was like, get
Mhm.
it off me, because my dad hit me or whatever. And it was like, I literally felt it coming out of my body. So I was like, even though it was incredibly painful, it was
Mhm.
my pain that I was holding on to. And it was literally sort of another grace of birth. It was coming out. And because I had the courage, or whatever you want to call it, to face that and not give in and just be like, okay, it
And
was like,
drug it.
yeah, I was given this gift. It just got lifted out. And,
Yeah.
after I gave birth, I was able to forgive my dad and like just so many things. It was
Wow.
like, it was such a huge gift. It like, I can't, and like you say, it just keeps on going like
Oh
endlessly.
yeah. I had this moment in my last birth, which was now, almost 2 years ago, where I was in my bathtub on my knees and just, kind of like chanting and just really getting in it. It was right before I like threw up and went into transition. So it was like kind of towards the end. And I was like bouncing around to these different parts of my consciousness, and the parts that were struggling, the thinking negatively, the parts of me that were resisting, and then the other parts that were like, mothering me and resourcing me. And I was kind of like just bouncing around, and I started to cry. And like from the outside, I have no idea what it would have looked like, but what was happening inside, yeah, I started to cry. And it's psychedelic, so it's like really hard to articulate now because it's just so, yeah, it's so psychedelic what's going on in my consciousness. But anyway, my point is that um I could feel things rearranging. There was a very specific
Mm,
moment in my birth, and I could feel, even though it all really fucking hurt, it really hurt. I was feeling so much physical pain, and I was feeling a lot of spiritual pain. And it was like a hard purge in ayahuasca or something. Like it hurt so bad. And so I was crying, and I was realizing as the tears were coming down my face that I was healing in real time. And
mm,
I really only in ayahuasca has that ever occurred to me, like as it was happening, that it was in real time rearranging on every level of my consciousness. And I just like had this moment, and I can remember the exact position I was in, and the water was up to my knees, and I was like, oh, that's what is occurring. I'm healing in real time. It's so
mm.
cool. And exactly what you said, like it's also excruciating.
Yeah.
Oh,
To feel the density of like, it's been so packed
oh.
in for years, and it's like, and that's lifting out and trying to like find its way out. And it's like, ah. Yeah, because but it wasn't like the pain, the sensations wasn't located. It was like my whole body. It was like I was like an earthquake, and it was rippling out everywhere. It was like every cell of my body. Like, and I just, you can't you can't fathom it. You cannot explain it like until you've experienced it. And even then, you can't really, like you say, it's psychedelic, so it's very hard to recount or explain because it is in itself, you're a portal between the divine and
Happening
earth.
in like a totally other field than the one we're currently trying to communicate
Exactly.
in over Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like and that in itself is the magic and the mystery of it. And again, why, I am excited. I feel like I've got a boy spirit in my field, and I'm very excited for when he wants to come, and I'm very interested to see how my next birth goes. Like, so yeah.
And it is, I'm assuming obvious to anyone listening, but if this is your first episode ever, let me connect the dots of, why, of course, everything you and I are talking about right now, why it is sought so heavily to be co-opted and to drug women out of their power. And, we are born on drugs, we die on drugs as a human race, globally, across the entire planet. The vast majority of humans are born on drugs and then will pass on drugs. And the ins and outs, of this realm are heavily, heavily medicated. And why? And, and a really obvious reason for it is that evil forces are holding these portals, that have greatly like monopolized these portals, so that a lot of dark, energy can, control what's going on and all of that. But then I look at, the power of birth, and obviously why I'm so motivated to do what I'm doing is because there's this whole light reality that we know, and that many women know and have, like I said, forever, and will always know, because it is ours to have and ours to enact. And it's just so important that we protect it, and that we speak about it, and that we share the light that is within all of us, as women. We are literally, like you said, carriers, instruments of life and light, same, right? And so it's really just so obvious that the dark forces at play have done such a successful job fracturing mother baby. And when you drug and harm and fracture the mother baby connection, you can control the consciousness, because a wounded mother baby at the center of a culture is fucked. Like, we are so fucked that that's the average consciousness and reality, and that we are putting mothers and babies into a really brutal survival mode out the gates as their initiation. So they have so much to overcome from a survival standpoint. They're never going to access the shit you and I just talked about. But if they did, and if they learn, and if they do it next time, like, watch out, world, because we're seeing what's happening, and it's really big.
And the craziest thing you just said is, a lot of mothers, they don't even know that they're traumatized, because this is the norm, because we're so, brainwashed by it. So
Well, and everyone around them is normalizing it. Everyone's traumatized.
Exactly.
I mean, it's such a cesspool of, it's a trip. It is a
Yeah.
trip. But
Yeah,
that's
no.
why our membership is, it's why I called it the lighthouse. It's like, it is a lighthouse. It's like, look at what's possible. Look at these hundreds and hundreds of women all over the world in all these different countries who are accessing this, and there's nothing special about them, and different from any other woman on this planet, other than the choices that they've made, and the resources that they have been able to access. It's like, internally, I mean.
Yeah. You can't underestimate the ripple effect. Like,
Yeah.
since becoming a mother, I have softened so much. I'm not like angry at my husband all the time, projecting my shit onto him. Like, he's just like, who is this person? Like,
That's not morbid.
and I'm like, who is this person? Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
chuck my shit on you anymore. I don't want to put you down. I'm like, it's crazy. So when the mother, like you say, has this experience, and she gets to continue really receive this grace, it affects everyone, everything like around you. We are just like frequency and energy. So like, if I'm holding this energy as the mother, and I'm receiving all this grace, that ripples. And like you say, that this is why it's been so kind of co-opted, because of the potential that we have as women to shift and to like become more of what we truly are is huge.
So
And
now you know why I named it Matriarch Rising.
yeah.
Right? Like, literally what you just articulated is why that is the name. Like, because that's what happens when a matriarch
yeah. Yeah, I mean, the whole time we've been talking about this, I've had like energy moving all the way on my back and everything. It's just like, and I'm so glad to talk about this with you, because like, yeah, it's magical, and I want it to be spoken about more, so that women know that it's possible, because we don't know. Like, I didn't know it was possible before, and I was choosing free birth, it's like, yeah, so grateful.
Well, Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Grateful to have your story be shared this way. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the show today. You can support this podcast by donating to it through the link in the show notes below. And of course, leaving an awesome review on whatever platform you listen on. The more reviews, the more visibility the show gets. So let's spread the good word of sovereign birth. Don't forget, you can watch our podcast interviews on YouTube and see the women as they tell their birth and power stories. And you'll also find our viral free birth collection of epic, raw birth videos on our YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel. We've always got a lot going on at Free Birth Society, and you can find out all about it at freebirthsociety.com, at Free Birth Society on Instagram, and opt in to my newsletter below. We offer courses on free birth, authentic midwifery, the blood mysteries, as well as one-on-one coaching, in-person retreats, and of course our annual women's gathering, the Matriarch Rising Festival. Our exclusive, private, vetted membership, The Lighthouse, is definitely something to check out if you're looking for a community of wise sisters to get guidance from and to meet in real life. Together we rise, sisters. We must speak our stories, fully claim our lives, and support one another. This is the living revolution, and I am so grateful to be in it with all of you. I'll leave you with our gorgeous Free Birth Society theme song, Wild Woman by Aruba Red.
I honor you for the wisdom you held, the ancient traditions of plant medicine and womb magic. I feel the spirit of the ancestors as I place my hands upon my belly. This sacred portal will be honored. Eons upon light beams of survival, withstanding the eradication of our power by design. I will not allow the separation of our young to be forced upon me. My sisters will no longer birth in captivity. The picket line redefined from burning our wild women to paralyzing us and drugging our babes. Strapped down in a clinical white bed, drying up the milk from our breasts. Keep your needles. My family will never again be doomed to chase those dragons or your poison. We reject your fear. We choose love. Everything with intention. Death, ascension. I will fly and bring her back from the stars.